Okay, 11th and 12th grade, we are continuing with our chapter 26. We're talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He became president in 1932 after making some promises to repeal prohibition and to offer American stuff. Lots and lots of stuff. He had a whole program for offering stuff that he called the New Deal. He became president in 1932, and this is the first time we're really going to see socialism on a broad scale, a government-owned broad scale. Okay. The first 100 days or the first 3 months of a president's time in office is often seen as a honeymoon period, which means the press goes easy on them. They ask them really softball questions, and they don't really criticize very much. FDR knew about this, and he is going to take advantage of it. He's going to push through 15 major laws through Congress. Now, he had connections in Congress already. They were ready for him. They got the bills all ready to go, and they had them on his desk. So in that first 3 months, 15 new bills he signed into law. You see him in this picture here that it depicts him as a doctor treating the country's economic ills. And on the table, you can see the initialed bottles that are all the different programs that he is going to come up with. The nurse is portrayed as the Congress. And he says, of course, we may have to change remedies if we don't get results. He's going to push those results through no matter what, because this is his political stance. He believes in socialism. FDR's first accomplishment was to stabilize U.S. banking system, and he did that by closing it down. That's simple. People were doing bank runs. Bank runs is when people lose confidence in a bank and they rush to withdraw their money, and that's seen in the classic Frank Capra movie, It's a Wonderful Life. So if you haven't watched it during Christmas, it's a good thing to watch and just get involved with this idea of the bank run. How he was able to stay open in the movie was he and his wife had just gotten married. They were getting ready to leave for their honeymoon, and the bank did not have enough money to pay off everybody who wanted their money, because the money, he explains it really well. The money is taken in by the bank and then lent out again to collect interest. So the money is in everybody's houses, it's in everybody's cars, it's in their fields. And so he's trying to explain that to the people. We don't keep all that cash on hand. Just because you deposited $200 doesn't mean I have $200 of your money like stored away somewhere. No, I've taken that money, I've lent it to this person so they could pay it back with interest. And then I give you part of the interest, I keep part of the interest. And so when everybody comes to the bank and demands their money back, he says, just let me give you enough to get you through the weekend until we can reopen again at the beginning of the week. And in order to get through that day, his wife sacrifices their honeymoon money. So it's several $1,000s that they could sacrifice. And when they're all done, they have $2 left, $2. And they do a little joke that they put the $2 in a basket, and they say, well, let's hope that they multiply overnight, that's how money's made. It's not how money's made. Okay. Bank holiday. This was declared by the governor of Michigan in his state. He closed all the banks for 8 days, letting the banks give them time to calm the fears of their customers and also to get some of that money paid back to them that they had lent out. So FDR saw that and said, that's a great idea. I'm going to declare a national bank holiday. That was his first official act as president. He closed all the banks in the United States, which is a very large overreach, really big. Because the banks weren't controlled by the federal government, he made it so. Official act. Okay, the Emergency Banking Relief Act gave the president broad powers to control banking policies and to reopen the banks as they saw fit. Remember when I told you he was signing in law after law after law? Bob's your uncle. This is one of them, the Emergency Banking Relief Act. All of a sudden, he had power over everybody's money. Huh. Yeah, that's something that socialists do. So he's going to close all the banks, and then he's going to open them as he sees fit. So now you have one person really in charge of all the money in the United States. I'm going to go back just for a minute because I know I went by that one slide really, really fast. So some of you are probably going, And keep in mind, you can rewind this and watch it, but go ahead, write this down. I'll take a sip of tea because that's what I do. Tea good. Okay. Okay, I'm moving on. If you didn't get it, just rewind it later. Get the notes. Here we go. Fireside chats. This was genius. Let me tell you. This is FDR having this idea that he will talk to the American people every single week by radio. And you notice all of the networks are there. They're ready to listen. They have their mics set up. And this was the first time that a president made extensive use of modern means of communication with the people. Always before, it was a speech that was written out and printed in the newspaper. But here you have the president's voice talking to the people of the United States and telling them, this is what I'm doing now. This is where we're at as a country. It was almost like having a State of the Union address on the weekly. And those were called fireside chats. Not because he was by the fire so much, but because people listening in their homes would be listening on the radio in a room where they usually had a fireplace. So people would listen and sit near the fire and listen to the president explain what was going on in their world. Okay, the FDIC, this is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This insures all member bank accounts for up to $5,000 per account. It has gone up since this note was written, I'm sure. This is kind of important for you. I think I'm covering some of your words. So that one word after member is bank, and then the last word is account. So go ahead and write those in if you need to. Here's the thing, though. This would allow, if a bank went bankrupt, this insurance would kick in and you wouldn't lose any money from your account up to the amount stated. Okay, I believe it's up to $200,000 now. But if you have a lot of money in a bank account, you need to make sure that all of that is covered by the insurance, by the FDIC. If it's not, then you need to have multiple accounts. That happened to people with the last big housing boom, and then the bubble burst, and people who had $300,000 in a bank account lost $100,000 because they didn't know that it wasn't insured all the way up to $300,000, which honestly, I think the bank should tell you that. Hey, if you have this, we can't insure it. So, no. Okay, we talked about the New Deal being this new socialist form of economic development in the United States. This is a government spending and jobs program. Governments do not make money. They spend money, but they don't make money unless they're printing it. But even then, that's not a thing. Okay, here's the deal. The money that is being used for government spending and jobs programs come from the American people. So any money you would get from a government spending program, which means they would give you money, that's your money. You earned it. You paid a portion of that in taxes. They're giving it back to you. That's what a government spending program is. Now, you might not get that money back. They may say, you know what, you gave us that money. That's great. Thanks so much because this person needs it. That's when you start talking about socialism here. It's your money, but it's going to someone else. And then jobs programs, that means the United States government is offering people work, and then they're using your money to pay their salaries. That's what a jobs program is. Some of those people paid money into the government's taxes, lost their jobs, got a job in the job program, and got their money back as that job program. Now, where did he get some of these ideas? He got some of them from John Maynard Keynes, he was a socialist economist. And he believed in an economic theory that makes 0 sense. Even on its face, it makes 0 sense. And yet people still love this guy, the Keynesian economic theory. It's awesome. No, it really stinks because if you try to do this in real life, you get arrested. Okay, so he believed the government could live beyond its means by taxing and spending. So let's say the government only is making so much money, but it wants to spend all this extra money. Go ahead and spend it. We'll get the tax money eventually. That's not how you work things. Okay, this is be like you deciding that you want to drive a Lamborghini. You've probably heard about that 5-year-old who took his parents' car to go to California to buy a Lamborghini for $3. Okay, you want a Lamborghini, you want a mansion. So, but you don't make that kind of money. You make let's make you the average American citizen and say you make $45,000 a year. That's the average. You make $45,000 a year, but you want all this stuff. So how are you going to get all that stuff? Well, you could take out short-term loans on your credit cards, but eventually you're going to have to pay all that back. What happens if you don't? Well, they're going to tank your credit and you won't be able to get any more money. They'll also repossess some of the stuff that you've purchased. They will repossess your house. You will be homeless. They will repossess your car. You will be carless. You cannot get stuff on a short-term loan and not pay the loan off. You will get in trouble. But John Maynard Keynes is saying this is exactly how government should work. They should live beyond their means and not pay that money back. The money will come in. Sure it will. That's not how that works. Okay, so I'm covering a couple words. One is could after government. That's the only word I'm missing. You're missing the D in could. I hope you figured that one out. Here we go. A deficit is what happens when you are spending more than you're receiving from taxes and other revenues. So the U.S. government doesn't really make money. It collects money, okay, but it's not actually doing something where it's actually creating something and selling it. The closest the government gets to that is when they sell public property. That means property that belongs to the U.S. government. They can sell that to American citizens, and that money can go into the Treasury. They also have made money in the past with tariffs, which can actually stall or stagnate the economy because people get tired of paying extra money for imported goods. But the deficit is when you are taking out lots and lots and lots and lots of short-term loans. You're spending more money than you're actually getting in revenue. That's like you getting a $10 allowance a week and you are spending $20 in allowance a week. Now, how do you do that? You're borrowing from your friends. You know, you go to your friends and say, you know what, I'm getting paid by my parents on Friday, but, you know, could you spot me until then and then I'll pay you back? And you've borrowed $10 extra. You've got to have to pay that back somewhere. You're not going to have any friends left. Okay, the gold standard. This is the practice of backing paper money with gold or silver. In other words, all the paper money that's printed, there has to be a correlating gold or silver dollar amount in the Treasury. On April 19th, 1933, paper money could no longer be redeemed for gold. This allowed the government to print more currency. And everybody's like, yay, we have more money. It's pretty much worthless now because you are not backed by gold or silver. The only thing that makes money anymore is the fact that it's a promise. It's an IOU. If I take the dollar that I have, I have a dollar. Yay. Okay. If I take a dollar to Dollar Tree and I go to spend it there, they have to take it because the government has promised that it is good. It is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So they have to take it. But the dollar itself is worth nothing. What it represents is a dollar. But it's not backed by anything other than the government's promise that it's legal tender. We are living a life of lies, okay? But really, this is where we're at right now. We are just going on the supposition that this is worth $1. Okay, the 21st Amendment was passed. Are you shocked? You shouldn't be, because I told you that FDR promised that he would get rid of prohibition, and he began working on that almost immediately. And so the 21st Amendment was passed, and that legalized the sale of liquor. It repealed prohibition, and it repealed the 18th Amendment. First time we really see the repealing of an amendment. Now, we have lots and lots of pictures, especially in Hollywood, of Hollywood stars, you know, yay, repeal the prohibition is over. Everybody's excited. A lot of these guys weren't following the law anyway. They were involved with illegal activities of, you know, in speakeasies. Drugs, alcohol, prostitution was all a big part of that area of life, unfortunately. Okay, so the Tennessee Valley Authority. This was designed specifically to control flooding, conserve soil, and bring hydroelectric power to the Mid-South. All good things. However, there are going to be some people who are a little frustrated by it because in order to create this man-made lake, some people's farms are going to have to be flooded, so they're going to be kicked off of their land that had been in their family for years. You're also going to have a lot of people saying this is a very expensive project to undertake during a depression. Where are we going to get the money for this? Don't worry about the money. It will come in. Remember what Keene said? Just go ahead and overspend. It's okay. Now, how did they get people on the side of pro Tennessee Valley Authority Dam? They did it through the propaganda. Remember we talked about those photographs? One of the photographs you saw was a lady in the Ozarks that had little kids next to her, and they don't have any electricity, no indoor plumbing, but they don't really miss it because they've never had it. It's not a thing up there. Well, that picture was used to show, hey, look, Americans in poverty. We need to make sure that everybody has hydroelectric power. We need to make sure. Hydroelectric just meaning water is used to turn tumblers, I forget what they're called, tumblers, and that would create electrical generations, okay? Generate electricity. It starts with a T, and I'll remember it. I'll shout it out like we've got some kind of weird Tourette's, historical Tourette's. It's going to be great. So those pictures were used really to convince people that the people who are in the South desperately needed this specific kind of power plant because they were so very poor. Now, I will be honest with you, my thought process on this, I think it's a good thing to bring all of America up to a good standard of living. I think it's fantastic. But during the time of a depression, maybe it's not the best time. Maybe we need to find ways to do this in a more cost-effective way instead of trying to manipulate people's feelings and emotions to get this thing passed. Another thing that they did, I don't know if I picture on my tech. Nope, I don't. Another thing they did is they went to a nearby state. It wasn't even in Tennessee. They went to a nearby state where there was a copper and coal mining, and there had been a flood through there. And because of the mining, it had basically allowed the water to strip away a lot of the topsoil, and people went there, photographers went there, took pictures and said that's what was happening in Tennessee Valley, and that's why this was needed to control flooding. There were pictures from a completely different state, completely different area, and they were used as propaganda to push the idea that Tennessee Valley Authority was absolutely necessary. And the reason for that was because Roosevelt really wanted this big project with his name on it. Okay, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, it sought to increase prices for agricultural products. That sounds like a good thing. We're going to raise the price of how much you are going to sell your food for. Okay? Farmers in the United States were growing a lot of food, which is a good thing. But then people weren't making a lot of money off the food that they were growing because we're in the middle of a depression. So what the government decided to do was to pay farmers not to grow food. If they didn't have as much food to sell, the prices would go up. They would cause an intentional shortage of food. Intentionally short the food so that the prices go up. When there's a shortage of something, prices go up. For instance, every once in a while, Florida will get hit with a really bad cold snap. Really, really awful. And the price of orange juice will go skyrocketing up. Suddenly, orange juice is like $5 a gallon. The reason for that is because there's a shortage of oranges. And Florida is famous for growing lots of oranges specifically for juicing. So the price will go up. Now, when Florida doesn't have a cold snap and they don't lose most of their crop, the price of orange juice goes down. So the market bears it. So what the Agricultural Adjustment Act did was they made an artificial shortening. Instead of saying, oh, there was a terrible, terrible problem, maybe a frost or there was a drought and that caused the food supply to be shortened, and so we have to charge more for it. instead of a natural disaster happening, they created a man-made disaster. They forced farmers to destroy food to make the prices go up. Then the government also paid farmers not to plant crops, to short the food so that the price would go up. And they would pay them not to graze livestock on pasture land and even to kill their animals so that the price of meat and milk, any kind of dairy, would go up. This same process is still continuing today. You may have heard with everything that's been going on with the coronavirus and quarantining that there's been some gaps in the food supply, and that farmers they feel like they're being compelled to get rid of some of their animals because they can't sell them at a decent price. And our president now is saying, no, keep your animals alive. Let's sell them for meat like you usually do, and we'll back you up on that. But that's like the opposite of what was going on here. Here it was animals being killed to bring the prices up. It's really sad and it's really awful. And the whole thing still happens today with the Agricultural Adjustment Act to keep prices unnaturally inflated for the benefit of not just the farmers, but of the people who are selling the food. Okay. Farmers would much rather see their food be on people's tables. They would much rather see their food sold across the world than to burn it or to bury it, which is something that they do. The National Recovery Administration, the NRA. This is not the same NRA that's the National Rifle Association that was developed after the Civil War to arm former slaves so they wouldn't be killed by so they could protect themselves, so they wouldn't be killed by people like the KKK. That's why the NRA was originally founded, was to protect former slaves. This is the National Recovery Administration, when the government attempted to control wages and prices and to limit competition among businesses and encouraging labor organizations. So this is the government getting involved in people's businesses, encouraging labor organizations that they would then control. Guess what? Labor organizations give a lot of money to politicians. So the politicians who have labor backing, they have a lot of money coming into their personal pockets and into the coffers of them as they run for office. Labor pays a lot of money out to get their way. But this idea that you wanted to control wages and prices, it was to increase wages and prices. The idea of artificially lifting up the prices, demanding a certain minimum wage that be paid. So that means there's going to be companies that go out of business completely because they can't do this. They can't up the wages. They can't, if their prices are supposed to be set high or to set low, and they can't compete in that market because the market has been fiddled with, messed with, manipulated by a government organization, and you end up with businesses having to collapse. They can't exist. It actually causes more problems in the long run. The Works Progress Administration insisted that people work before they receive government money, and people said, okay, that seems like a normal, brilliant idea, that people aren't just going to be getting a check for doing nothing, sitting around all day. No, they have to work before they can receive any kind of government aid. Unfortunately, the WPA became riddled with political corruption and waste. So a lot of people who were running the WPA were sitting around doing nothing and collecting money. Didn't work out. That word that I'm covering is corruption, by the way. You just need an O-N at the end. Generally, the market will work itself out. When people want a certain product, they'll buy it, and they'll buy it at a price that is reasonable. If the price is too high, they'll either look for a competing product or they'll just do without until the price comes down, and then they'll buy it. Okay, but the market can pretty much fluctuate and control itself over time. It really doesn't need a lot of manipulation by government officials. Okay, the Civilian Conservation Corps. The WPA has promised jobs to a bunch of people, saying that they could not get government funds until they worked. The president of the United States is saying, I need people to get out there and do work for me. And so they had to constantly find jobs for people to do so they could pay them the government funds that people would be paying in. So the civilian conservation courts provided reforestation and soil and water conservation projects for young men. They put these young men in like dormitories or big tent cities and had them go out and clean out the underbrush in the forests, to put in their conservation projects where maybe there had been a fire, they would replant trees and things like that. So this did provide projects for young men to do and get paid by the U.S. government. But again, they're being paid money that their family had to pay in taxes. The Social Security Act. This was a voluntary program that established a government fund for unemployment and old age insurance. The idea that people, when the Great Depression started, you had a lot of old people, they couldn't work anymore, but their family was also getting out of work, and you had a lot of older people who were expecting to be taken care of by their families, which is the way it should be, and then suddenly nobody had any money coming in. So the Social Security Act was supposed to be a voluntary program where every time you got a paycheck, a portion of your paycheck would be removed, taken out, and put into a bank account run by the U.S. government. And that would be a way to protect you when you became 65. You would start getting money from the interest from that bank account that was run by the U.S. government. So this is a voluntary program. It's going to be a fund for unemployment. You lose your job, you need a little cash to get you through until you get another job. That's when you withdraw from this big bank account. You just get some of that interest. And then old age insurance. So from 65 until you die, you get paid because you've already paid into it. This is your money that you're putting in. Later, it became mandatory. Instead of being a voluntary program, it became a mandatory program. Everybody's checks have Social Security taken out of it. The Social Security agency grew, and they began to transfer the money people invested into welfare programs. Welfare programs don't make any money, so it doesn't make sense to invest in them to make money, because remember, the whole purpose of that old age insurance and the unemployment insurance was to put it in a bank account. That's what a bank account does. It lends out money and gets it back with interest. But if you're putting that money into welfare programs, they don't make money. So you end up just pulling money out of one account, giving it into another account, and there's no paying back. So as a result, Social Security had to become mandatory for all the workers in order to fill that bank account back up. And still today, we are constantly being told Social Security is being threatened. Social Security is being threatened. Social Security is going to go bankrupt. Yeah, because people in government who don't seem to have a clue about basic economics keep taking money out of it to pay for social programs that don't pay any money back. Of course it's going to go broke. Duh. That's not the whole point. That wasn't supposed to be the point of Social Security, but that's exactly what it became. The National Labor Relations Act. It gave workers the right to form labor unions and practice collective bargaining. In other words, the workers would tell the employers what they wanted. I will work for you if you pay me X amount of dollars every hour, and you give me so much time off, and you give me certain protective gear. Now, some of that is just basic. I need, if I'm going to work for you in this job and the job is dangerous, then because you've hired me, you need to protect me, okay, as your worker. That's actually a biblical plan. That's a standard, okay? But it is up to the company owner to decide how much they're going to pay. It's up to the worker to decide whether or not they want to be paid that or not. If they don't want to be paid that amount, they need to go find another job. But according to National Labor Relations Act and the idea of collective bargaining, it's this is what we want. You will give it to us, or else we won't work for you, and we won't let anybody else work for you either. So they're really just holding the company owner and the entrepreneurs hostage to get what they want. It sounds really good for the worker, but it really puts a division between the worker and the entrepreneur. It makes them hate each other. And it becomes a very difficult position to be in, because a lot of people who were excited about working look at themselves almost as victims. You know, here I am working for the man. It's terrible. How come I'm only getting minimum wage for this job that took, 20 minutes of training? I deserve more. No. The people who put in the money to build the factories are the ones who should get the majority of the money for the factories. It's just the way it works. But if you're a hard worker, you can work your way up, honestly. When it comes to talking to someone who's an entrepreneur and saying, look, I think we need to fix this problem, I think you're going to be able to find, usually you're going to find a way to talk to that person. If not, you have the right as an American citizen to walk away, and they can find somebody else to work for them, period. Okay, that's where we're going to stop for today. That's 30 minutes, and I'm going to let you off on time. I know, it's shocking. I will have another lecture for you tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Bye.